Hi, thank you so much for tuning in to Talking About Life with Lily podcast. So, I'm going to be having like a chill conversation with my audience today, and it's going to be about my experience with a man that had a drinking problem. And the reason why I felt like I should have this discussion is because I want to highlight the fact that so many men don't talk about loneliness enough, and many of us are not aware that so many men feel lonely. This is not like an explicit type of loneliness with regards to I need a companion in that sense, not in the sense you're thinking about, but I'm talking about the fact that so many young men, older men are so lonely, and I think I will highlight how that ties to the drinking problem with my experience with this particular man. And so um, when I was in school, I schooled in Nigeria, University of Benin, and so I stayed off campus. I didn't stay on campus, and so I stayed in a certain house, and not everyone living in that house were students. So some were students. I would say 80% were students. They probably didn't, the remaining 20% was people that are doing their regular stuff, going to work and all, and they're not students. And so one particular evening, I decided to come to the corridor to sort of like just receive fresh air and just to just enjoy the coolness of the evening. And so this particular um, man came also to the corridor to receive the freshness of the evening and the coolness of the evening. And so while I looked at him, he was oozing of was giving me that vibe that he was drunk because of this smell that was coming off of him. And so I remember looking at him and I felt like initially I felt disgusted, and then later on it was almost like I was narrowed down to not just looking at him with his particular drinking problem, but because the reason why I'm saying it's a drinking problem is because I've seen him occasionally, not occasionally, many times with that same thing. Mostly in the evenings, he's always drinking. He's always doing a lot of things that are just like so far fetched with regards to drinking. There's never a time you experience him sober, and so I looked at him one particular evening, and at that evening I was sort of like praying versus receiving, fresh air. And I looked at him and I was like, this is God's child. Like this is really God's child. And I think I should have a conversation with him. And so when I had a conversation with him, I recognized that he was extremely lonely. According to him, he was, saying that, he's the second child of his family, and he doesn't really have much friends, and even if he has, there's always, it's just a hard thing to keep that friendship going for long. And so many times he will find himself you know having friends for a certain period of time, and then you know him finding out that those are not the typical friends for him, or something will break out that will cause the friendship to shatter. And so he has sort of normalized this fact of it's better off to be alone, and it's you can't find anybody that is willing to be your friend. And so he said he would just basically go to work, and then when he's coming back he would just drink. And I don't know, I just looked at him with a lot of compassion, and I bet you that was not the compassion from me, that was compassion from God. And I looked at him differently, and I was just like, normally I won't even have a conversation with you because I don't know if you've noticed, Every time I see you, mostly in the evenings, like you're always drunk and everything. I personally feel like you should put a stop to this drinking. But aside from what I feel, I think you should recognize the fact that you're not lonely. You know, there's someone there for you, waiting to hear you speak to him, and that person is Jesus. And I think you should have a conversation with him if you feel lonely, because I'm not going to drift. I'm just going to stick to the story, and then probably later on I will comment. If you feel lonely, um, you can just go to your room and sit down and have a conversation with him and just say, you know what, God, I had a very terrible day today, or I had a good day today, but I don't know, I feel lonely. There are no friends around, and I just want to express myself to you because I know you exist, and I know that, you are someone that loves me. And I was basically trying to tell him that God loves you, and he's always there waiting for you to have a conversation with him. And he was like, no, he has a conversation with God. He wakes up in the morning, and he kneels down and he says, thank you, Lord, and that's it. I'm like, no, I'm talking about a conversation, like a conversation. Like you should have a conversation with God. Like you should treat him like he's real. Like the way you've seen me. Like you should treat him like that, because he is indeed real and he loves you. And I believe that he doesn't want you to continue to live your life like this. Every single time you come back from work, you're drinking yourself to stupor. I think the best thing for you to do right now is to go into your house, sit down, and just talk to him. It doesn't have to be a fancy prayer. It doesn't have to be, shabala shabala. I'm just trying to use that as a as what I will categorize as trying to spice up your prayer, and trying to come, trying to come, what's the word? Trying to come, um all knowing in terms of your wisdom and your ability to communicate. But just come as you are and just have a conversation with him and just tell him, like, this is how I feel, and I know you love me, and I want to have a conversation with you. And so he was like, okay, he's gonna try that. And so he did try that, in fact. And the next day he met me and he was like, oh, Lily, I did what you told me to do, and I recognize the fact that, looking back at my life, every time I work a certain period of time and I get a certain pay, I noticed that I squandered a lot of money on my drinking after I had that conversation with God at night. And it was almost like, after I had that conversation with God, I just spoke to Him, like you said. Just spoke to Him honestly. I did not spice up the prayer. I just came to Him as I am, and all those things. And I noticed that it was almost like a revelation to me of the fact that I have been wasting my life drinking instead of getting even times two of my pay, because half of my pay goes for my drinking every single time I come back from work. And I said, well, that's amazing news. That's good news. I that's fantastic. Like it's a beautiful thing to be able to see that God actually revealed this to you. But I don't want this to be like a stopping point where you only talk to him. Just make sure you make this a mandatory thing of talking to him every day. And it shouldn't just be thank you, Father, in the morning. You just have a conversation with him every day. Even if you're busy throughout the day, when you come back, just try and make this like a regular thing. And he was like, yeah, that he just wanted to say thank you and all. And I said, you're welcome, and I'm happy for you. But one thing I noticed was, even after that, he started getting a little bit clingy. He will always look for me if I'm around, and all those things. And I was like, what is actually going on here? I had a conversation with you because I noticed that you needed help, because I can't be watching you drunk and I'm just going to be visually judging you and in my mind and with my eyes, and I won't do anything to, I won't speak life, or at least represent the fact that I'm a child of God, that I'm a daughter of Christ to you, despite whatever it is that I'm seeing that you're doing. And I did that, but now you're becoming clingy. And so what is going on here? And he was like, nobody has ever, spoken to him, or, seen him differently, or all those things. And it was almost like he was trying to be, friends with me. And I was like, that is not going to happen, because I didn't speak life into you because I was looking for some sort of friendship. It's good to be friends with you, and I know that people listening might probably take this out of context. You should be friends with him. There's nothing wrong with being friends with him. But I was in that situation. I noticed the kind of friendship. He was getting too clingy. There's a difference between someone that is friends with you and someone that is looking for you at every moment in time, to the point where when you're even on a call, the person sees you on the street, the person wants to have a conversation with you by all means, like literally by all means. And even when you're on a call, the person is like, hello, are you done with the call? And it's like, this is getting really out of order. Like, I had a conversation with you for certain reasons, but now it's becoming extreme. It's becoming something else. That's my microphone package. So, excuse me for that. So it's becoming something else. And so I started to pull back. And immediately the fact that I started to pull back, he went back into his drinking problem. I started drinking all over again. And to me, it was like, I didn't meet you to be your God. That's in my mind. I wasn't having this conversation with him. I didn't meet you to be your God. I met you because I wanted to highlight the fact that there's something going on with you. There is really something going on with you that you need to fix. And this whole thing of I am lonely, so I have to drink myself out of my loneliness is not working out for you. We can all see that. And not only is not working out for you, your livers are suffering, your kidneys are suffering, so many things within your system is suffering if you're doing this every single day, which he did, which he does. And so it was almost like I noticed that he went back into it. He will still see me, but it's almost like he will try to avoid me now, because he noticed that I wasn't giving him that much access, because he was getting too clingy, and to the point he was even demanding my audience. And I'm like, I didn't sign up for this, so I'm going to pull back. And so since I pulled back, um there was a lot of there was a lot of problems with regards to that, in terms of him going back to his drinking problem. And at first I was feeling, sorry about it. But then again, I was like, this is not even up to me to save you. It's not my job to save you. I already told you what you're supposed to do. So when the revelation will come upon you, you'll be able to do what you're supposed to do. But that aside, I want to have a conversation about loneliness. And, a lot of a lot of people, and particularly men in this particular situation, a lot of men are lonely. I know it seems very cliche. It seems very it's so, what do you mean by a lot of men are lonely? But it's like, from my experience, from my dealings with him, I could tell that that was the case, because I don't know. If loneliness can drive you to drinking, just that main thing, drive you to drinking and drive you to be clingy, and then if you don't have somebody in your corner, you go back to drinking. And it's like, it's a very devastating circumstance to be in. And I think we should start having a conversation on loneliness and why men feel lonely. It's not even that, because people might have different faulty reasons why they're lonely, because a lot of people might say I'm lonely because of this, but it's like that doesn't make any sense. But loneliness drives people insane, from my experience. I'm not saying he's insane, but it drives people to make insane decisions. Drinking is not a sane, at least to me, it's not a sane decision. It is not in general. It's To me, it's not a sane decision. Drinking to the point where every single day you come back, you're drinking, and you're drunk, literally. It's not a sane decision to me. And I think people need to start realizing that even when you're lonely, there's still someone there for you, and there's still someone that loves you. And there should be this openness about why you're lonely and where that is coming from. Are you lonely because you feel you're lonely, or you're lonely because of certain things have happened to you, and so as a result of those things you withdraw? Or are you lonely because I don't know what category I should put in there, but why are you lonely? Why do you feel lonely? Is it a matter of your parents abandoned you, or your parents are there? Why? I think the answer to the why will lead you to the right analysis of how to be able to structure your life. Because nobody's gonna save you out of this loneliness. At least this was something I learned even with having a conversation with this man that had this drinking problem. I can't save him. I had good intentions with regards to having a conversation with him, but I cannot save him. I cannot save somebody that feels like anybody that is kind to him is an opportunity for him to expect more. And then when he doesn't get that more, he goes back to drinking. And it's like, no, this is much more deeper than than just helping him out. This is now more so about him asking, self-reflecting, and just having a conversation with himself. Why am I doing this? Why am I in this particular bubble? Like, why am I here? Why do I feel lonely? Why do I act the way I do? I think a deep dive into those conversations will lead you down a path of self discovery, that will lead you down the path to make the right decisions if you really dive deep and thought through about so many things that is going on in your life that's making you feel lonely. So that's the end of this podcast. That's just basically what I wanted to highlight, the fact that we need to start having a conversation about a lot of people being lonely, specifically men. Why does loneliness drive people down a very dark hole? We're talking about so many other things, but I think loneliness is like top notch. You need to start having a conversation on loneliness. Why do you feel lonely? Why do you act the way you do as a result of the fact that you feel lonely? What is the end result of this, you feeling lonely? Like, how can you get out of the loneliness? Because a lot of people are so comfortable in feeling lonely that it's like they don't even want to get out of that feeling. They just want to stay there. And there are people that don't even recognize that they are staying there. So I think we need to start having more conversations about loneliness. It should be like a very severe conversation. So thank you for so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.